Hi everyone, and welcome to Picturing America. Picturing America is a curriculum that was put out by the National Endowment for the Humanities. And it's just a wonderful curriculum that combines art with history, and specifically American art with American history. I am going to screen share now so that you can see my slideshow. There we go. All right. And then make that full screen for you. Can everybody see it? Okay, awesome. Thanks for the thumbs up. Okay, so we're going to be talking about pottery and baskets from North America that were made over roughly the last 1,000 years. And there's some beautiful pieces, some very, very old, and some that were made much more recently. And so just for a little bit of background, let's talk about what this class is about. It's about art that reflects the history and culture of the USA. When we look at some of these pieces and we look at the reasons behind why the artist created them, we get a better understanding of our history. So for today, we have 6 examples that we're going to be looking at from the year 1100 until today. Well, really the last one was made in 1960, but these pieces are continuing to be made. So when you think of art, I don't know what you think about, but it's not just something that looks good hanging on the wall above your couch. There are beautiful paintings and things that do hang on the wall above our couch, but there's many other types of things. There's sculptures and there's baskets and all kinds of things, which, you know, are what we're looking at today. And some of them are beautiful or mysterious or surprising, and some of them are like useful and they're functional pieces. So today, I also talk about why we study art. Art is a reflection of the time in which it was made. It says something about what was going on at that time period. It might tell a story. It might make you feel something. You might feel sad or happy or peaceful or surprised. So in order to understand our past, we need to understand where we are now and where we have come from. Some of my slides, I just want to let you know, have a lot of words on them, and they're really just to help me. I don't want you to worry about reading all the words on the screen. Most of them, not this one, but most of them have a lot of pictures on them. And so if you just look at the pictures and focus on that, that's kind of where we're going to focus today. So my first piece is made by the Anasazi people. So who were the Anasazi people? They were a prehistoric Native American civilization. Today, their descendants are called the Pueblo people. So they lived from the year 100 into the 1600s, and their descendants still live today. They were farming people. They built homesteads and small villages, and they also built this great cultural capital in the Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. They were fantastic engineers. They built these multi-story apartments. They had a road network. Their society really was fairly complex. And they moved on different times in history for different reasons, maybe drought or war or various reasons. And so the Pueblos, who you may have heard of, are their descendants today. They lived in an area in the Southwest United States called the Four Corners region. So you can see that on my map here, and some names that don't look so familiar except for maybe Arizona, which is in region number 3. And here's another look. You can see that those 4 states make up Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. And the map to the right, the top area where it says Ancestral Pueblans has an arrow pointing to Chaco Canyon. And that is where we are looking to right now with the Anasazi piece of art that I'll be showing you in a minute. So this is some pictures of the Southwest of those states, and it looks a lot different than Delaware, doesn't it? We do not have a single mountain in our state. And if you notice too, the rock that the mountain's made of is different colors. You get kind of the black rock, you get the tannish rock, you get the reddish rock. And these are the materials that are actually going to be used to make pottery. So it's going to make a difference in the type of, the color of the pottery that is made. So, and the people, the Anasazi Indians, they built this amazing place called Chaco Canyon. And it was made over it was constructed over a 1,000-year span. And if you look at the picture to the right, that looks like a D shape, like a big letter D turned to its side. So this was one of the incredible places that they built, and it was occupied from about the year 828 to 1266. So this structure was built over 3 acres of land, and it had about 800 rooms in it. And archaeologists don't think that it was actually a village or a town. They think it was more of a ritual center. So it had over 800 rooms in here. They think that maybe about 12 households lived there at a time, but they found lots of pottery and things there many, many years later. And then another example, later on, the Anasazi Indians moved to cliff dwellings. So you can see these buildings built straight into the cliffs, which it protected them from the weather. It protected them from people who might attack them, from intruders. And it was built near springs, so they had a water source. And most of the dwellings were 1 to 2 rooms, but one of the largest dwellings contained about 150 rooms. So it's just, their architectural skills were pretty incredible. And these jars are the things that we want to look at today that the Anasazi made. So these jars, hundreds of these jars, were found by archaeologists, and they don't know what they were used for, but they look so cool. They're like a tall cylinder shape. They have little tiny loops in the top so that rope could be threaded through and they could be hung. And then they're painted with geometric designs. I see triangles, stripes, squares, all kinds of these shapes that are, they repeat. It's a series of triangles, a series of stripes to make a really attractive design. They all have just black lines on them, no other colors, and the clay is white. And after they use coils, they have like a flat base, and they have coils of clay around and around and around and around, and they smooth it out and they decorate it. Then they make this really watery clay. It's called white slip, and they paint it over the edge and put it in the fire to harden it and to create a usable vessel. We just wish we knew what these were used for, but they are really nice to look at. And these are some other examples of Anasazi pottery. Can you see again the repeating shapes? Zigzags, lines, triangles, squares, dots. There's some really cool patterns in there, and they're all really unique. They're kind of, they're like freestyle in a way that they just, whatever they felt like painting on there, they just made a design that day. I think they're very beautiful, and I love the different shapes of the jars and the pots and the plates. So that was our first one. And now moving on to the second one, we're going to talk about the Sityaki people, who today are called the Hopi people. And if you look at our map, they're also in the Four Corners region. The Anasazi were in New Mexico. The Sityaki people are in Arizona, not very far away at all. And so it's just actually just about 125 miles away. So the Sityaki pottery looks quite different. Do you see the designs have color? They use different plants and minerals to create different color paints. And this is what we call polychrome. Even the color, the base color of the clay is different. It's not as white as the other, it's more orange or red or brown. And the designs, even though they contain some geometric shapes, there are pictures on here. There are a lot of things from nature. There's rain and clouds and stars and the sun and animals, insects and reptiles and birds. Hardly ever a human image, but lots of other forms from nature. This particular piece, this Sityaki bowl, is the one that we're focusing on today. So on the outside of it, it had some geometric designs, and but on the inside, it's much more complex. It has this wild-looking reptile creature, but it's not like a reptile you might necessarily recognize. It has a 3-feather headdress and a snout, and the length of its snout and its toes are unusually long. So it's kind of got this fantastic feel to it. It's like a mythical creature almost. And it's much more decorated than the Anasazi pottery that we looked at. And many years later, there is a woman, her name is Nampeyo, who was a young Hopi Tewa potter. She had, I believe her mother was Hopi and her father was Tewa, and as tribes moved around over the years for different reasons, some of them came together. So the Hopi Tewa people came together, and she used to watch her grandmother making pottery, and she was just fascinated by that. And she started to want to make her own, and she looked at lots of shards, like broken pieces of pottery in her area to get ideas, and she experimented with different types of clay, different colors, and all different ways of firing it to make her own style. So let me change slides here. I think I kind of talked about what was not on that slide a minute ago. So this was explaining how the Hopi Tewa came together. Anyway, so there was an archaeological site not far from where she lived, and that's kind of where she found all these examples of pottery and you know, the desire to make her own. So she and her husband worked together and found new ways of giving life to ancient designs. And soon she had created a totally new look in Hopi pottery. So when other potters discovered that her designs were selling for a higher price, her art was copied, and it soon spread, because for the first time, pottery wasn't just used for practical uses, like this was the dish we ate out of or the cup we drank out of. This was a beautiful piece that people wanted for their own collection, you know, more to look at than to use. So she has been credited with bringing the beauty of the Hopi pottery to the attention of the world. So she brought something from so long ago back to life, you know, in the last 100 years, or just slightly over 100 years, and pieces of, you know, examples of her work are on display in Washington, D.C. at the National Museum. And so she also found a way for the Hopi people to make a living through their art. Here's some more examples of Hopi art. You can see more, it's very similar to that old Sityaki bowl I showed you that had cracks in it and everything. But if you look at the colors here, the oranges and browns and blacks and yellows, and the different colors of pottery, you can see how she took that style and brought it back to life much more recently. So that was our second piece. Let me get on the next page here. So now we're going to move to our third piece. There was another couple who lived in the 1800s and the 1900s, Maria and Julian Martinez, and they were reviving this, they were creating a new style based on archaeological finds around San Ildefonso in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So again, in this Four Corners region. So they again used the coil style, where they have a flat base to the pottery and then round coils of clay all around, and then you smooth it out into the shape that you're going for and paint them and fire them. And in the year 1909, they were contacted by an archaeologist who was asking them to reproduce some of the ancient pottery that was black. There's a style of pottery called blackware. And the Martinezes worked for 8 solid years to figure out how on earth do you change red clay into black pottery. They experimented over and over again. And so 8 years later, they discovered that in the firing process, if they made their bowl, they made what they were making and they put it in the fire and they smothered it, they covered it with all the ash and coal, that trapping the smoke in the firing process is what changed the red clay to black. And they came up with these beautiful pieces of blackware. And they had special techniques to just to keep it all black, but part of it is matte, meaning it's not shiny, and part of it is glossy. So you get these contrasts, even though it's all black, you can see the pictures on it. It's just a very, very different technique. And so this is the main blackware piece that we're looking at today. And they call it shape, a combination of symmetrical and asymmetrical, which mean, you know, symmetrical means that it's the same on the left as it is on the right. And so there's some aspects to this piece where it's exactly like a mirror image. The right looks like the left. And there's some aspects of the designs on it that are different on the left and the right. It's designed with a slightly rounded bottom, so it kind of nestles into the ground. And when you put it on a hard surface, it's not exactly flat, so it kind of hovers on an invisible axis. It kind of like moves slightly. And this piece, even though it looks solid black here, if you shine a very bright light on it, you will see white reflections. There is a third color, white, in there that will show in very, very bright light, not in the more subdued light. So I don't know all the techniques they use to come up with that, but I think it's pretty amazing. So as a result, they gained national recognition, which led to a revival in pottery making. So what that did was create a lot of jobs for people, and it became very, very beneficial. And they also gained the respect of artists around the world. So now we move on to our fourth person and piece of art. So this is another piece where a replica was made from taking a very old style and bringing it back to make something new in more recent history. So we're going to talk about the Washoe people who we're moving out of the Four Corners region now over to Lake Tahoe and so I'm going to show you on the map where that is. But what happened was that their way of life was suddenly altered by the California gold rush. All of a sudden, people settled, the travelers came, and they built roads and fences and said you can't live here, and that kind of thing, and they had to relocate. So and that this is kind of what I was talking about. And they were a nomadic people, meaning that they moved around all the time, but they couldn't do that as freely anymore with so many new settlers in the area. And they had to find a way to make money because they couldn't just farm everywhere anymore. This is where they were. If you look at the map at that lake, it's between Nevada and California. And a beautiful, beautiful region with a huge lake there. And that's where they lived. So, the new settlers kind of became interested in their beautiful basketry. So they had been producing baskets for very practical reasons. They were hunter-gatherers. They needed fish nets, and they needed baby baskets and things like that. But there was a man named Abe Cohn who hired a young Southern Washoe woman to produce baskets exclusively for sale to non-native buyers. So this woman, Louisa Kaiser, whose birth name, her name was Datso La Lee, she was hired to make baskets to sell, basically to tourists. So she used willow as a type of a branch when she made her basketry, and she would take 3 rods of willow and weave the strands around that. And she had a flat base, and then the basket kind of got wider, 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 and got narrower again at the top. It kind of looks like a ball that got squished down a little bit. And it took off like crazy. They were able to sell so many baskets and make a living out of an ancient tradition. So even though after a while the demand kind of tapered off, do you know that some of her baskets sold for as much as $25,000 to $75,000 at antique shows? That's incredible. So now we're moving on to our 5th one. We only have 6, so we're getting near the end here. So this is our one example that is not American Indian art. 5 of the 6 are, this one is not. We're gonna go to coastal South Carolina now, the opposite side of the country, our side, East Coast, south of Delaware. And we're gonna talk about an important tradition of basket weaving that arrived from West Africa more than 200 years ago by traveling across the Atlantic Ocean with slaves. Slaves from Africa came across to North America, and the descendants of those slaves still live in the long, very narrow islands off the coasts of South Carolina and Georgia. They are the Gula people. So Gula is the name of their culture, is the name of their people, is the name of their, and they speak Creole. So, all right. So here you can see a picture of the United States, and the arrow points to where I'm talking about in South Carolina. So those islands off the coast are very marshy. I think we know something about that here in Delaware, how we have a lot of marshland around us, and that those marshy conditions were ideal for growing rice. And they were very isolated. And so being isolated was one of the things that helped the Gula people to preserve their culture. And after the Civil War, the Gula people who were once slaves were able to purchase the land that they once worked on for others. And they were able to maintain their separateness and make their fine baskets. Now, I said that they grew rice because it was marshy land. And one of the things that you need for rice is these winnowing baskets, this very, very flat basket here. And so when you kind of crush the rice grain and you separate the husk from the grain, the outer part you can't eat, that's called the husk. And so that you can just get the part that you can eat, and you kind of crush it and you shake it up in these flat baskets, and the husk gets caught up in the wind, and it's very light, and the wind just blows it away, and you're left with the part of the rice that you can eat. So these baskets were made from bulrush, a type of marsh grass. So it's material that they had at hand. And it's just really utilitarian. There's not a lot of design on these baskets, but it provides a very simple beauty. And the circular design, does it remind you of those things you look at and you feel like you're being hypnotized? It almost like it moves. That's the kind of effect that these baskets have. They look like they're in motion, even though they're not. So they're spiraling coils. They start at the center very tight and go around and around and around and around. And then there's some color variation, and just to create a very simple but beautiful and practical basket. All right, and this is our very last one. So now we're going to go all the way to Alaska. So you can see on the map, way across in the northwest corner of North America, up in Alaska. And we're going to be talking about baleen baskets. So in Alaska, baskets were traditionally made by women, and they were made with birch bark. But in the early 20th century, a new type of baskets that was made by men were created in an interesting way. So there were a lot of whalers up in Alaska because whales were used for all kinds of things that people needed and wanted. And this man, Charles Brower, he asked a local man to make baskets from baleen, which is in the whale's mouth. It's the stiff, fibrous plates in the mouth that filter the plankton that they eat. He wanted baskets to be made out of it. So, you know, Inupiat have hunted whales for centuries, and whales supplied food and fuel and construction materials. None of it was wasted. And baleen, that stuff in the whale's mouth, it is very strong. You can bend it a little bit, but it's pretty stiff. It's not easy to work with, but it's very useful and strong, and it holds up. So they used it for sled runners and bows and ropes, and even shredded for fishing line. And so anyway, but then petroleum and plastics started to replace whale products, and all the commercial hunting jobs just dried up. So no, there weren't jobs for hunters, there weren't jobs for the Inupiat workers. So these baskets provided a new way to make money, and they were beautiful pieces. By the way, this basket is very, very tiny. It's only about 3 inches by 3 inches. It's just like a tiny and cute little basket. But that dark black color you see there is baleen from the whale's mouth. And then you see this cute little seal popping his head up at the top. And that is made out of ivory. So because baleen is too stiff to form the teensy tiny coils in the very center of the basket, as you start out, you just can't twist it quite that tight. They took the tooth of a whale, which is made of ivory, and carved it. So like, for example, this one is a whale's tail. And then the image you see above it has the artist's signature on it. And they took their round piece with whatever image was on it and drilled lots and lots and lots of tiny holes on it and threaded the baleen through it. It was like a starter plate to get the rest of the basket together. And then the cute little ivory knob was like, I don't know, just a decorative part to the lid. So here you can see some really fun examples of whales' tails and seals, and you can see the different colors. So baleen can be light brown, dark brown, black, but where you see the white part, those are bird quills, just to add a little bit of design to the basket. And so it creates a very glossy basket. Here you can kind of see how they have simple patterns from the lower part of the basket that are matched on the top with the lid. So it's a very pretty little piece. And so, okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation part, and I want to just ask some questions. And maybe you want to unmute so that you can answer some of these things and we can talk about it together. So let's think about it. Of all the 6 things that we studied today, how are the objects similar to each other? How are they kind of the same? Any ideas? You noticed?
Some do.
Go ahead, Eugene. You want to unmute?
They are all like pottery.
Can you say that louder for me?
They are all pottery.
There's some pottery. There is pottery, and the Anasazi jars are pottery, and the Sityaki bowl is pottery. That's good. And then what's the other type we have?
There's like baskets.
Yes, there's also baskets. Yeah, that's very good. Do you notice anything similar about their shapes?
Most of them are like round.
Yeah, you're right. They're pretty circular. So that's a big similarity. So what about who they were made by? Most of them were made, can you tell me who made most of them?
Native Americans.
That's right, exactly. And what about the one that wasn't made by Native Americans? Do you remember?
Slaves. Or other people like.
Yep, the Gula people from Africa who came as slaves. That's right. Excellent.
Miss Karis,
Yes.
I see a chat from Mel, and I believe she's saying that she actually owns some baskets that were made by Native Americans.
Is that right? Oh, that's fabulous. I would love to see those. Maybe you can maybe you can send me a picture or two of your baskets. Do you know who they were made by?
Actually, I was just saying,
Yeah, you've seen some, or you have some in your house? All right. Well, that's great. Well, let's go on to the next thing to think about. If you could touch these objects, how do you think each one would feel? Let's start with the pottery. So of the types of pottery, how do you think they would feel?
pretty darn smooth too.
So if they cut into it, it'd be like you feel the.
Do you think that they're smooth or I think that the pottery would kind of feel maybe cool to the touch, kind of colder. I think that they would be mostly smooth, but patches of rough where, like on the blackware where you have the glossy and the matte, I think you could definitely feel the difference in texture there. You could kind of feel the raised bumps and parts of that. How do you think baskets feel? Are they cold?
I think this like the first one.
Like the first one?
Yeah.
Do you think it feels like kind of scratchy maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of scratchy and knobby and rough. What do you think that the top of the black basket feels like? The one with the little seal's head poking out.
Cold and smooth.
I think you're right.
The top of it, the seal one.
I think you're absolutely right. That's great. Yeah. Do you think that they're heavy or light?
I think that one's heavy and the basket is light.
I think you know what you're talking about. Good answer. Right. Let's go on to another thing. Okay, let's think about what kind of materials were used to make these things. There's going to be different materials for different things. What do you think the pottery is made out of?
Like smooth.
And it does feel smooth. I think they smooth out the clay to make the pottery. So is clay from an animal? Is it from a plant? Is it from the ground? Do you know?
From the ground.
From the ground. Excellent. That is right. All right. So what about the baskets? Most of the baskets are, well, you tell me, what do you think the baskets are made out of? Anybody got any ideas? Are they made from stuff from the ground? Or are they made from plants or animals? Yes. They are mostly all made from plants like willow branches, various kinds of thin branches that can be woven together to make a basket. But there's one basket that is not made from any kind of plant material. Which one is that? Any takers? What about the basket from Alaska? What was it made from?
The whale's teeth.
Good job. Yes, they were made from the top of it was made from the whale's teeth. And then the rest of it was made from the baleen that's also in the whale's mouth. So it's all animal products. Oh, and even part of a bird, the bird's quill, the part that the feather is on, that makes the white marks on it. Great job. All right. So another question I have for you. Okay, remember the Washoe people. The Washoe people were nomads. So, which means that they moved around a lot. So does that tell you anything about why they might have made things made baskets rather than pottery? Why do you think they would have chosen baskets? Yes, Eugene?
To carry stuff.
To carry stuff, exactly. These baskets were very, they could be watertight, airtight. They were woven so closely together that, I mean, yeah, you could pour water in and it wouldn't come out. And what was the thing about the baskets? The thing that, if you remember, they're so light. Do you think that would be useful if you had to move around a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could get really heavy carrying a lot of pottery around when you're always moving to different locations. So they're not so breakable, and so it was a very practical thing for them to use. We come to the next screen. Okay, so a lot of these things that were made in the last 100 years or 150 years or so, they started to be made because of tourism. You know, they started to figure out how the old pottery used to be made and the old baskets used to be made, and they copied it. So why did they need to make so many of these? Like when the railroad out west got built and the gold rush happened. Yes, Eugene?
Because people would buy them.
They would buy them, exactly. All of a sudden, the non-native tourists were very, very interested in these beautiful pieces. And lots of people wanted to buy them, and it made a good living for the people who made them. Thank you. And so now I want to compare the pottery we looked at. So we've got the Maria Martinez jar, the blackware. We have the Anasazi jars, the black and white ones, and we have the Sityaki bowl that were all made in the American Southwest by the Anasazi or their Pueblo descendants. So what features do they have in common? I don't know if you remember me talking about them. When they made them, which is how you make a lot of pottery, you have a flat base and then you have these coils of clay that go around and around and around and around, and then they get smoothed out into the shape that the potter wants. So they were all made with coils. They all have different types of geometric design. Some have more pictures as well, but they all have some part of geometric design on it. So that's some of the things. The Blackware and the Sityaki pieces don't have like a white slip on the outside, but the middle one, the Anasazi jar, does, and it kind of protects the pattern that's on there. All right. Now, we've got these two baskets, okay? So tell me about what's the same and what's different about these baskets. Anything you can think of? Do you remember what they're made of? We've got the one on the left, the Baleen basket, is made entirely of animal products. And the one on the right is made entirely of plant material. We've got differences in color. One has a lid and one doesn't. One's kind of more straight up and down. One kind of is rounded up, right? So those are some of the things. And these are some links to the Picturing America curriculum that we use, and some of the things that explain it, and then the video. I'm going to have to put that up on our website so that you have, maybe I'll email that to you so you have the video link. It's just 6 minutes, but it's pretty interesting. And I wanted to tell you about some of the upcoming programs we have here at the library. We have a couple book clubs going on at the moment, monthly book clubs. We have Page Turners, which is meeting on October 15th. And it's for, there's not really a set age. We're calling it a tween book club. And our next book is The BFG by Roald Dahl, which is a hilarious book. And I've just finished reading it, and I laughed a lot. There's just a lot of crazy made up words in there, and a funny adventure that goes on. And we'll be doing some activities that go with it if you want to join us. But there's really no age limit. So it's going to be, if the weather's good, it's going to be outside behind the VFW. There's some picnic tables out there. We're going to meet there. If it's rainy, we'll meet on Zoom. And then there's a teenager book club on November 5th, also out there at the VFW at the picnic tables there. Miss Donna, are you on at the moment?
Yes, I am. And actually, we had to move the date of our teen book club. Normally, it's the first Thursday of the month, but the first Thursday of November is a special day regarding the elections and things like that.
Yes.
We'll be meeting on the 12th instead.
Okay, thank you for clearing that up.
Not a problem.
And then one more, we have the upcoming homeschool programs the first one is for the grown-ups, and it's about keeping records and making report cards and transcripts for your homeschoolers. So if you'd like to join that Zoom class on October 16th, we'd love to have you. And then the next Picturing America one is going to be about Paul Revere. Am I right, Miss Donna?
Yes. Yes.
Why don't
Yes.
you tell us about that?
Well, Paul Revere, I think most of us remember him as riding through the village and telling everyone that the British soldiers were coming. This was leading up to the Revolutionary War. Well, some of that story is certainly very true and very important, but there's some of that story that it was just kind of made up, and people don't realize that it was just someone's idea. So we're going to talk about what an amazing person Paul Revere was, what a brave deed that ride was, but what the real story is.
I am excited to hear that class. Thank you, Miss Donna. So I want to thank all of you for joining us in our class today. It was a joy to have you on here, and we hope you'll join us again next month for our Paul Revere class. And I just want to say that if there's anything we can do for you while you're doing school from home, whether it's homeschooling or online schooling or whatever it is, we want to be your homeschool library. If you need help researching any kind of topic, we'd love for you to give us a call and tell us what it is you need, and we'll do some research for you and try to get the materials that you need. So, you know, feel free to call the library, email the library, but we want to be here for you as your homeschool library. So thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye-bye.
Is the code and password same for next time?
It'll be a new code and password. And if you register for the class on the library website, we'll send that out to you so that you'll have it.
And don't forget, if you haven't picked up your activity packets, stop by the library. We have lots of fun things that will go along with this program.
Thank you so much for reminding me, Miss Donna. I forgot to talk about them. There's lots of written material in there about today, and there's a list of books you can get that we have in the Delaware Library System about what we talked about today. But there's some crafts too. So let me just show you really quickly. There's stuff to make Anasazi style pottery. So do you see how it looks like we have the white clay and the black lines? This can be done a couple of ways, and we provided some strips of black paper that you can make really cool geometric designs on, or if you want to venture out, you can use a black marker and make whatever kind of design you think would go. I would encourage you to research Anasazi pottery and look at the type of designs they use and try to replicate it. And then there's one more, which is a weaving activity. So we've got a frame here for you, and these are in your kits too. And there's like several colors of yarn that you'll get. So I have like fall colors in mine, but a lot of them are very bright. And so what you're going to do is tie the end of the yarn to the basket, and you're going to weave it back and forth, in and out, around and around. And you can use one color for a while, tie it off, and try the next color for a while, and tie it off and try the next color. And you're going to end up with a nice little bowl here, a yarn bowl. And so I hope if you haven't already gotten your packets, I hope you'll come get them and practice some weaving and some pottery designs. So, all right, that's about it. Thank you so much. Yes, I'll end the meeting here. Bye-bye, everybody.